Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacqui Wilding and I'm the Chair of Bronllys Well-being Park Community Land Trust. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our Health and Wellbeing Forum to you all. We will be covering some of the most pressing challenges facing people living in South Powys when it comes to health and well-being. So be highlighting some of the opportunities for improving and strengthening services that we all rely on. Most importantly of all, however, we'll be listening to the concerns and aspirations of you, the communities, and relaying these back to Powys teachers. Regrettably, the Health Board has not been able to send a representative this evening to explain their plans for the health and well-being of this part of Wales. Tom Chance, the Chief Executive of the National Community Land Trust Network, via video this evening. Jane Dodds, MS, leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats. Michael Eccles, Director of haypubliclibrary.org. Casey Edwards, Project Advisor for Cooperative Housing, Cwmpas. Councillor James Gibson-Watt, Leader and Cabinet Member for an Open and Transparent Powys. Sarah Leyland-Morgan, Passenger Transport Manager for Powys County Council. Claire McNiffe, Lead Officer for Community Connections Parvo. Lydia Powell, the President of Bronllys Well-being Park, Cllr, and Hugh Russell, Project Manager for Communities Creating Homes, Cwmpas. Written responses, because unfortunately he cannot be present this evening.
First though, an important message from someone many of you will recognise, a true companion, a true champion rather of community and community action, and actor and activist Micheal Sheen. He helped us to launch the seminal next 10-year document about last year. So if we look up on screen, and hopefully our technician will allow us.
As the Honorary President of the Wales Council for Voluntary Action, I aim to challenge and support their impact and role in supporting the community and keeping us focused on what really matters locally. And as a patron of Social Enterprise UK, I support local projects which benefit local, environmental and cooperative causes. So it's wonderful to see this initiative beginning to emerge at Bronllys, bringing together a strong group of communities to use and secure the exceptional facilities at the community hospital there, addressing in very practical ways the concerns and aspirations of local people, because local people know what's needed on their patch, what's missing and what could be. Bronllys Well-being Park Community Land Trust gets that. And this is being recognised by an increasing number of people locally and nationally. Sophie Howe, who you'll hear speak in a few minutes, is one of those who sees in these proposals an example of what a determined community can do. So I commend this document and the initiative and imagination it represents. I wish it well. I'd like to end by quoting one of our most revered political leaders, Aneurin Bevan. Society becomes more wholesome, more serene, and spiritually healthier if it knows its citizens have at the back of their consciousness the knowledge that not only themselves, but all their fellows have access when ill to the best that medical skill can provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Malcolm, for being here, actually. But thanks, Micheal Sheen. We're a true supporter of us, so we're very grateful for his time and efforts supporting our organisation. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first panellist, and that's Jane Dodds. And she's been given a few questions. She's going to tell you her answers and bits and pieces, because she's going to explain exactly what she's organisation, the political views, and the likelihood of what's going to happen in Powys. Thank you very much, Jane.
Okay, I think I've got this right. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Well, it's lovely. Diolch yn fawr iawn am y cyfle i ddod yma and not so much. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come here this evening and just say a few words. And they will be a few words, because actually I want to use as much time as we have to hear your views and thoughts. So I'm a member of Welsh Parliament for Mid and West Wales, which includes Powys. But just to give you an idea of the region that I cover, it's from Llanelli up to Snowdonia, and from the coast of Wales to the border with England. There are more sheep than people in my area. Just to give you a little story about when I met the Queen. I'm not showing off there, but when I met her, I said I cover more people, more sheep than people, and she said, quick as a flash, she said, how do you know what they think then? I was totally stumped. Let me just say a few words about my thoughts around health and wellbeing, and also, as you've heard, I'm also the leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats. Health and wellbeing for me covers so much, and I know for you as well. But for me, there are important principles within that. Lots of us within the Liberal Democrats wrestle with this request. What do the Liberal Democrats actually stand for? I bet you're thinking that as well, aren't you? I would ask you though, do you know what Labour and the Conservatives stand for? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. You know what the Green Party stands for, we know what Plaid Cymru and SNP stand for. But we're always asked, Liberal Democrats, what do you stand for? And I'm proud to say that what we stand for are sustainable communities. We work hard in our communities, we want them to be sustainable. And what does that mean? Well, that means we want them to ensure that we keep people locally, if that's what they want, that there are jobs, housing and opportunities for everybody, including keeping our young people, particularly in a rural area like the one I cover. There's lots of chatter, isn't there, about growth. And I don't actually believe in the pure definition of growth. I believe in a just growth. I believe in a green growth. And I believe our communities can actually fulfill the purposes around a just and a green growth. Let me give you two quick examples. You heard Micheal Sheen there talk about the Future Generations Act. As a member of the Welsh Parliament, that act drives everything we do. The Future Generations and Wellbeing Act. It's unique. There isn't one of those around the world, and lots of countries are actually looking at how they can adopt Future and Wellbeing Generations Act. It means that everything we do in the Welsh Parliament has to be stress tested, future tested, to make sure that there's no harm to the next generation. And in fact, that it produces a healthy and looked after future generation. So that's the first thing that I just want to talk about. The second thing, you may have heard, this is very specific, because I believe one of the major challenges we face in a rural area is transport, public transport, getting around. Our young people often leave our rural areas because they literally want to go places and they haven't got the ability to do that. It's not easy to get around a rural area like ours. One thing we have had in the Welsh Parliament, and it is a bit controversial, is something called the Roads Review. I'm totally supporting the Roads Review. The Roads Review is a complete halt on building new roads in Wales. And the money that was going to be going into building new roads is going to be going into public transport. And I want a fair allocation of West Wales. I want a fair allocation for bus transport. We need to see more and better public transport, bus transport. And let me just give you one example. In Pembrokeshire, they are it's going to be interesting. They are piloting something called a flexibus. 5 areas of Wales, a flexibus are being piloted. There are small minibuses They allow people who use wheelchairs and pushchairs to get on and off much easier than we currently have. And you can actually summons them. Now, I want to see that here in Mid and West Wales. Some other examples that I've seen as well about sustainable communities, so I want to see more of those in Mid and West Wales. So I know I'm in the red cars, I'm often told to stop talking. But there's just some examples there of what we want to stand for and what practical examples there are, but I want to hear more from you. Thank you very much, dear Brian.
Thank you. I'm not going to interrupt each time. I'm going to say thank you to each person at the end. What I will do is hand directly to the next speaker so we can move on rapidly, if that's okay with everyone. So we're just going to go along the panel here. So over to you, Casey. Yes, please.
That's for you can see you're going to be able to hear me. I'm only going to deal with the microphone, but also deal with the messaging. So no pressure. So I'm Casey, with the Community Powys the name of Cwmpas, so formerly the Wales Property Centre, you might have known us under our former name, and we're a development agency working for positive change across Wales. I work specifically on the Communities Creating Homes programme, so it's a Welsh Government and nationwide foundation funded programme, which works with communities and organisations across Wales to help them to create more community-led housing. So that means communities, local people like yourselves coming together to decide what kind of housing that they want in their communities. So it's really putting local people in control of how those affordable homes are built. So Jacqui's asked me to talk about a couple of really great examples in Wales of community-led housing. So I think we've got quite an historic, we've got quite a history of community-led housing in Wales. Robert Newton, famously born, obviously, Robert Owen, sorry, famously born in Newtown. So we've got a great history of cooperatives, and I think the majority of co-ops and community-led housing schemes in Wales have been around people taking on empty properties and communities coming together to live together in those empty properties. You know, we've got Tears for Friday in McNiffe, a group of local people who were going to be made homeless because their landlord wanted to sell their property, but they came together as a group, as a collective, to buy a property, and now that's safeguarded some affordable homes for local people, and it's also led to the creation of a community hub. We've got the Gallery project in Cwmpas. They're a social enterprise up there that not only, I think they're more famous for their arts and cultural centre in Cwmpas, but they've also got a number of affordable homes in Cwmpas. So obviously they've been able to, that's a community leading on the delivery of creating affordable homes. We had some funding from Welsh Government a number of years ago to create some pioneer schemes with housing associations, mainly in South Wales, and we must continue to replicate that in the future. And we've got some really great examples on the horizon. So it's a community land trust on the Galloway Peninsula. So they again, a group of local families coming together to create their own affordable housing, and various groups across Wales looking to do the same, especially in North Wales and rural Wales. You know, Jane mentioned about the fact that local people have to have homes. That might 2 minutes. Jane mentioned that local people need housing to stay in their areas. And just to wrap up, Cwmpas, we provide advice and support to any communities wanting to do this. So we can take people through the entire journey of forming a group to actually getting your homes built. So if anybody would like to get in touch to learn more, or if anybody would like some support and advice, please feel free. Thank you very much, Jim.
Can you say that?
Thank you very much. I think my challenge is not to get the red card. I've been asked to speak about or to talk about community-based transport rather than public transport in terms of the questions that I've been asked to speak about. The first is about examples of community-led community transport and their contribution to health and well-being. And when I thought about this, for me, it's a case of all about community transport schemes are in Powys, of which there are currently 17, are independent charities or community interest companies, which were developed from a community-led base. Some are more than 40 years old. In fact, I think our youngest ones were developed in 2002. So, and we supported, in my role previously in Powell, we supported with development officers and the community to decide exactly what kind of scheme they needed. All community transport schemes contribute to health and well-being, some directly by supporting people to access district general hospitals or local hospitals. As you're all aware, most does not have the district general hospital, so it's quite a challenge getting people to their appointments. Indirectly, keeping people in their homes is a fundamental part of what our community transport sector delivers. Keeping people at home where they have no access to any form of public transport is key to keeping them out of their homes. We don't have data to tell us how many people are kept out of their homes by the support the community transport gives them, but there's certainly data we should look into providing. In terms of good examples, there was a lot of work during COVID with community transport schemes, actually taking people to get their vaccines, to bring food and prescriptions directly to people's homes because they couldn't actually carry individuals. So there was a tremendous amount of work that was done there. Also, we negotiated contracts with the Welsh Ambulance Services Trust to provide people with access to non-emergency patient transport. What the roadmap of the community transport development and what support Powys County Council and Welsh Government offer, that's the challenge. I think I would reiterate what Jane said. We need a bigger slice of the financial cake in Powys. At the moment, money is allocated on a per capita basis, and it really doesn't work. We don't have the right infrastructure in place. We need to maintain and support the good work that community transport schemes are currently delivering. We need to recognise better the added value of what is in effect door-to-door service, or even in some instances, a room-to-room service. We have a real shortage of drivers. People are having, because of the crisis we have in terms of the financial crisis, for a lot of people, they're going back to full-time work rather than having the time to volunteer. Also, qualified drivers are few and far between, so that is the crisis, maybe not just within the third sector, but in transport as a whole. I think I pretty much covered most of what I need to say, really. Apart from the Department for Transport did say that they're looking for one ticket, one timetable, one network, and we need to consider that in terms of the first mile right to the last mile. So I think development of public transport is essential.
I'm going to move us on now to Tom Chance, who would have loved to have been here with us this evening, but I'll let him tell you why he's not, and if Andy can pop him on the screen for us, I'd be really grateful.
Noswaith dda. My name's Tom Chance. I'm the Chief Executive of the Community Land Trust Network. I'm very sorry I couldn't be with you this evening. I want to begin with a quotation lightly edited from David Lloyd George. Search out every problem, and you will find that land is at the root of most of them. Housing, wages, food, health. You must have a free land system as an essential condition of these. To use a gardening phrase, our social and economic condition is root-bound by the feudal system. It has no room to develop, but its roots are breaking through. One could say that the purpose of the Community Land Trust is simply to let those roots break through, to create a more fertile soil for a community's roots, to allow the full fruit of the community's talents and efforts to grow and be harvested. For as Lloyd George also said, what better resources can you get than this wealth created by the community, and how better can it be used than for the benefit of the community? I was reminded of Lloyd George when I was last in Westminster, in Parliament Square, which is where I am this evening, sadly unable to join you. His statue stands next to that of another land reformer, Winston Churchill. Both recognise that communities create the value in the land, but rarely gain the full benefit. It's the workers, the business owners, teachers, nurses, community councillors, club volunteers and others who make Bronllys a good place to live and work, make Talgarth, make other parts of Powys good places to work. But when it comes to decisions about the lands in your area, you have little agency. Community land trusts enable communities to organise democratically, take ownership of land, and have agency to build community wealth for community benefit. With CLTs, communities become clients for architects, not consultees, partners to developers, not opponents, and campaigners with, rather than against, councils. In England, they've grown to almost own 2,000 affordable homes, village halls, shops, pubs, workspaces, green spaces and more. They've developed these working alone or in partnership with housing associations and developers. And we support them as the national network for CLTs in England and Wales, helping you to form a CLT, learn how to run it effectively, network with other CLTs across our two nations, and access other expert support from organisations like Cwmpas. Half of councils are supporting CLTs, and more than 50 housing associations and private developers are now partnering with them. There's a mountain of evidence, as tall as Weinbach, that community involvement in regeneration improves outcomes, that the best way for local people in communities to feel pride in changes happening in their area is for government to enable local people to envisage and deliver those changes themselves. And sadly too, a mountain of evidence that local and central government often focus on weak forms of community participation, leaving communities feeling done to and eroding traditions of self-help and community organisation that have built Wales. The Welsh Government supports strong participation in community-led development in theory, but in practice the experience of CLTs in Wales has been less positive. So, reforms that we've advocated to the funding regime for social housing and for land have been slow or non-existent. Frustrating efforts for CLTs to access funds that housing associations, for example, can easily access. Pressure on public bodies to cooperate with proposals for their land has been weak, and those processes have often become antagonistic. CLTs in Powys, the Gower and Pembrokeshire have had to deal with inconsistent, often indifferent, and sometimes intransigent public bodies. There's a prevailing paternalism that pervades attitudes. CLTs are asked to jump hurdles no one else is expected to jump, to prove they can do something rather than being helped to just get on and do it. Policies lack the teeth of those in Scotland and the comprehensiveness of some in England. Now there's a concept from an English MP called a community right to serve. What if communities in Wales had this right and it was couched in the language of the Future Generations Act and the Wellbeing powers? Where you have a local democratic community body like a community land trust, where you can show local appetite to be involved in development, and where this will clearly benefit the well-being of your community now and in the future, shouldn't you have a right to serve, to be a partner? This, I think, should be a guiding principle in reforming policies in Wales, to build up the capacity of communities across Powys to serve by tending that fertile soil in which your roots can grow. Jacqui Wilding, I hope your evening goes well.
So, thank you very much, Tom. I'm going to hand you over to Micheal now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. My name is Mike Eccles and I come from Hay Company Library Hospital. CIC set up in 2020 in order to save our library from being closed down by the previous regime as County Council. We negotiated a 5-year contract, which is renewable. We saved the library, but part of the vision that we had was to extend the reach into the community and support the community in ways we think libraries should be able to do. We're about to face one of the most stressful periods in our history. Communities that create networks and groups to prepare for what is to come will be creating a community that is resilient to the worst effects of climate change, namely resolving together issues such as mental health security, food security, energy security, housing security, etc. I find the best way to address such issues is by bringing people together and asking them what they think. And the best and most democratic and inclusive way to do that is by running what is known as citizens' community assemblies. Let me tell you a story. It's not my story. It's an extension of a friend of mine, a local was planning a pitch about climate change in Brecon on a Saturday morning. She saw the mother of a school friend before the town. They recognised each other, well, kind of recognised each other, and my friend moved forward to engage in a conversation. Immediately the woman put her hands out and turned her head away. I don't want to talk to you. We're farmers, she said. My friend was so surprised she had a light bulb moment. She decided that farmers and climate activists needed to be brought together. We need each other's experience, expertise, and each other's participation. Since then, she ran 3 assemblies for local farmers. To her surprise, the farmers turned up. And once there, they never stopped talking. The assemblies have made a significant success, and the farmers want more. Citizens' community assemblies bring people together who otherwise would never meet each other. Not things in our university size, but in our new resilient communities, we haven't stopped thinking like that. Farmers have a suicide rate, which is twice that of the general population. Why not ask them? How do you think that issue might be addressed? And it brings together people from medical, fraternity, health professionals, and others who support people in need in mental health and address that particular issue. And why not do that in a community assembly? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Chair, we are getting to that. I'm going to highlight the information that would be sent from Hugh, although he can't be with us this evening, unfortunately. I'm going to summarise his first question in case he's going to answer his second question. He obviously wanted to tell us some really good information, and it was excellent. It was like an essay. So it would take quite some time to get it all out for you. So I'm just going to summarise what his question was. Given that Cwmpas has been promoting community ownership of local land and assets, what can people realistically do at this point to persuade government bodies like the NHS to transfer land and assets to local communities to meet community needs? His response was to the question, if you want the whole response, please go to our website afterwards, but I'm going to give you a summary. One barrier is undoubtedly a failure in Wales thus far to devolve powers to community level, which would enable people to take control of assets such as land and buildings in their area, which Tom was highlighting, and which meets local needs. Opportunities to address this gap in community empowerment have come and gone in recent years without significant progress. Number 2, the Institute of Welsh Affairs, excellent 2022 scoping report, Our Land, Communities and Land Use, notes that communities in Wales continue to have fewer statutory rights than in England or Scotland, despite the widespread support of 2 commissions for at least the same level of community empowerment measured in England, and with the reference to going further than England and Scotland. Sorry, there's a bit of a whistle on this mic, isn't there? Sorry, folks. I'll hold it a bit further away. Can you still hear me now? Yes. A little bit closer. Is that okay there? Okay. Sorry, folks. 3 fingers, yeah. Early in 2022, Communities Creating Homes released a report, Community Ownership of Land and Assets, enabling the delivery of community-led housing. This report included a list of the following recommendations designed to move Wales forward a more progressive position on community ownership. First, introduce Community Empowerment and Ownership Act to fix community empowerment legislation into legislation. Second, establish a Community Ownership and Empowerment Commission to stimulate innovative thinking on community ownership of land and assets in Wales. Third, create discrete funds with which to support the development of both community-led housing, specifically to develop social infrastructure in Wales. And it's written much more, and I'm not going to repeat all of it because it's quite a long-winded piece. But I'm going to hand over to Casey to give.
Where are you? There you are.
You know where
Are you
please. Thanks, Casey.
Thanks, Jacqui. It's also written an essay for a second question as well, so I will just summarise and just follow up on the note of the Commission recommendation from our paper last year. Welsh Government have actually adopted that and are now in the process of establishing that Commission, which we hope to have a strong influence on who gets to sit on it and also what it looks like in the future. Hugh's second question was around key policies that we would like to see local authorities adopt to create more community-led housing. We've talked about land quite a lot tonight. Tom Chance mentioned it, and that's something we would like to see: better land disposal policies on for public bodies. Just this week, there's been a discussion in Parliament around the duty to optimise the use of public land, which will have conversations for Wales. So I think that's something that we're looking to look into, and hopefully will have repercussions for Wales, positive repercussions. We'd also like to see local authorities dispose of empty properties to community groups, or not just empty homes but empty buildings. I think, as Micheal Sheen said, who best knows what it's the local community that knows what to do best in their community. So why should they not get the opportunity to take on assets and run local services? We'd also like to see local champions in local authorities, whether it's elected members or officers of community-led housing. So not only is the local community champion community-led housing, but also it's coming from the top. Planning is obviously a challenge for building affordable housing in general, but even more hurdles for community-led housing groups. So we'd like to see local authorities implement specific policy around community-led housing, including in their local development plans and supplementary planning guidance. And finally, funding obviously is always the elephant in the room, isn't it? Where's the money coming from for these homes? So we'd like to see local authorities maybe start providing seed support on community groups rather than the large scale capital funding, because obviously everyone knows the position local authorities are in at the minute in terms of finance. So just some starter funding for community-led housing groups to get together and start to plan their community-led housing groups. And then hopefully with the support of Cwmpas, ourselves, and the Welsh Government as well, we can help them to look at that more long-term finance, the capital finance needed to actually get those homes developed. So I think just that early stage support from local authorities would be really helpful.
Thank you, Casey. I'm going to go directly on to Claire now, and there's something interesting because we've talked a lot about land, as quite like you highlighted it, Casey, but now we're going to talk about the volunteers, which do a tremendous amount, and especially in Talgarth, we've got some fabulous volunteers. So I'm over to Claire.
Thank you very much. As we said earlier, everybody else in my organisation is at the Powys Volunteer of the Year Awards. So I apologise in advance, you sat with me. And the last time I presented to a group this large was probably my smallest ever. So I apologise in advance. Just to say, yes, brilliant. Is that all right?
Yeah. Well, so it's probably
I would never.
absolutely. Yeah, we can hand down the mic because normally
I would never ever ask you to like
That's right.
Is that all right now?
It's been a little bit fast.
Phew.
Welcome to it.
Yeah, like I was saying, sorry. It's a privilege to be asked to come as well, by the way. I'm not just, it wasn't just like just a day. I'm not being savvy. Voluntary organisations have a key role to play in shaping the future of our communities. It's clear that the third sector and community groups have a wealth of skills and knowledge that can be shared with a variety of partners that includes the council, the health board, and there's others. We arrange, I say we, that's Powell, I'm sorry, Powys associated with voluntary organisations, deliver a range of networks and fora where community groups can be involved and share information. Acting as a legitimate voice of the third sector, colleagues of Powys share the information at key strategic meetings to get those ideas known. It was clear during the pandemic that volunteers and communities stepped up to provide support, and it is vital that we take this forward. There is clear direction from Welsh Government to develop further, faster, and deliver an integrated community care service, which will be looking towards third sector and volunteers to play a pivotal role in supporting communities, particularly in preventing admission to hospital and improving health and well-being. We want to ensure the voluntary organisations help shape the future, and we have begun to do this through the locality networks, which feed into the Powys Social Value Forum. Each locality in Powys has a locality network that is facilitated by the community connector affiliated to that area. Each meeting is held on a quarterly basis and is open to anyone with an interest in enhancing the health and well-being of individuals, households, and communities. The locality network meeting members usually consist of third sector organisations, groups, individuals, statutory partners from health and social care, county, town, and community councillors, as well as local businesses and other private people. The purpose is to create a space in which collaboration, shared good practice, and co-production can be facilitated. It's a channel for local voices to be heard in determining how their needs should be met, providing an excellent opportunity for the identification of development opportunities that can support to build those communities and the capacity within them. And the Social Value Forum is a statutory requirement under Section 15 of the Social Service and Wellbeing Act. So that's important as well. The next Talgarth and Hague locality network meeting takes place in mid-June. And also, we also have support citizen representatives. So they are people like yourselves and representing people to ensure that third sector organisations, community groups, service users, carers can take part in decision making in equal partnership and power towards shared goals. There are other specialist networks, the Powys Agricultural Wellbeing Network, the Dementia Network, and the Advocacy Forum Network. These networks are open to staff or volunteers from all third sector organisations to help shape and learn the services that they are delivering. I'm happy to follow up with further information provided after the meeting on any of the information that I've spoken about. But that's my, I don't think I've got a card.
Thanks a lot, Jane.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Right, good evening, everybody. Now, one of the things you notice when you become a councillor is that local authorities are really good at producing plans. Yeah, lots of plans. And some of them like producing, and some of them we only produce because we have to, because that's what Welsh Government says we have to do. So, just a sample, but by no means exhaustive. We have a corporate plan, which the council approved a new corporate plan to coincide with the change of administration in the council last May,
approved at this full county council meeting. And although it's approved, you can't see it because they're on the website, so they're able to. But anyway, that is part. That's the first of them. I'll come back to what's in then there's the local development plan, which has been referred to. It's actually one of those really dry subjects, which unfortunately, when it comes to contemplating, not a lot of people take a lot of notice of, but I wish they would, because it has a huge influence on everybody's life and indeed their well-being. And as it happens, we're about to start reviewing the Powys development plan, and this is going to be a golden opportunity for organisations like Leyland-Morgan and others to get involved to try and take the revision of that. Because as the current stands, that's really right. It's not exactly a great help in furthering that agenda. So I'd like to see, personally, I'd like to see change that, and now's going to be the chance to do it. Then there's the Public Service Board, which is a partnership of all the public authorities and voluntary sector that operate within the Powys area. Some of them are pan-regional, like fire rescue, some are combined Powys. It's an interesting organisation. It has that responsibility to produce a well-being plan for the whole of the county, yet it has absolutely no executive powers. It doesn't have any money. It's simply a mechanism by which organisations can talk together and agree to do things. But has value. But then, really confusingly, and this is the last plan I will mention, there's the regional partnership plan. You might think this would be a regional partnership which covers the whole of the region that, for example, Ukraine represents. Not at all. Oh no, it's just the region Powys, for this purpose of this particular legislation, is just Powys, because Powys is so big, it's considered to be a region for this particular piece of legislation. And this board actually does have executive power, and it does have some grant money, and it formed primarily between the health board, county council, and voluntary sector to deliver the project. So it's all very, very confusing. But encouragingly, the one thread that runs through all of these plans is well-being. Because as James and others have mentioned, the acronym very often words get mixed up because it's a long title. The well-being of future generation plan is a golden thread that runs through all of this, and does indeed everything that all public authorities do, from community council level right up to county council and Welsh government and Senate. So the good thing about that is that it places this concept of well-being it tests everything you want to do. It's tested against how will this improve the well-being of the people you're doing it to, or doing it with, probably. And that's really important. That is a step change, and as Jane, I think, said, it's something that other countries would emulate, because they so admire this duty that's placed upon public authorities. If I could just turn to the corporate plan, because again, a really dry subject. 2 weeks of county council's corporate plan. Most of the members don't even read it, let alone the public. But actually, it's really important because it governs exactly how the council will behave. And at its core, it has 3 key themes. Its title is Stronger Fair Agreement, Stronger Communities, Better Access to Services, and Brina speaks for itself. We all understand what that means and how important that is. But this is about fairness throughout, and the Green Agenda is also about fairness and well-being. But we are very particularly keen now in the council on workforce development. And again, a dry subject. An awful lot of people work at the Powys County Council. A lot of people work that work in the services. And we have just started the process of becoming a real living wage accredited organisation, which will mean all of our apprentices, for example, and now quite a lot now, will get a real living wage from now on. They didn't previously, but from now on they will. And I got a red card, and I have to stop. Like, we'll just finish by saying this, and also the heart of this is tackling poverty. Again, thread on through all the things that we wish to do as a council, tackling poverty. Because at the heart of society problem and the lack of well-being that so many of our citizens is poverty. We have to face that. And some people want to denigrate that, but it is just that. And we can alleviate poverty, we will go a long way to improving the well-being of people living in this area. I could say a lot more, I won't. Thank you very much.
Members here, and board members, and she'll bring the question. So everyone would like to raise that. Chrissy will bring the mic to you. If you don't want to ask a question or you want to hand it in, then we will actually just read it out for you. Because this is your opportunity to make a difference. So we'd love you to ask as many questions as possible. I know that once I've been told that Liz Myers is online and she wants to ask a question. So over to you, Liz.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Hang on, I'll just, there we go, here I am. Here's my question. Why haven't you invited the Powys Teaching Health Board to be represented on your panel, since they're clearly a significant organisation when it comes to people's health and well-being?
Thank you, Liz. I'm going to ask funny enough, I'm going to ask our representative here, our president, to answer that question. So over to you. Sorry, thanks.
Hi, I do get it. We're very sadly disappointed that Powys Teaching Health Board can't be here. We had quite a successful meeting with the new chair in January, and at that stage we thought that he would be attending. He's actually since then decided that he hasn't got anything. They're working on what's to become a broadcast, I think, and he hasn't got anything to share with us at this moment. So we wrote and said, this is a really useful chance to listen to people, what they think. And again, he felt he couldn't attend or send anyone else. So we're sad, but we're continuing to work with Powys Teaching Health Board to make good things happen in our own backyard. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Liz, for your question. I'm going to read out an anonymous question here given to me. Why should people trust the Welsh Government, including the NHS and the health boards, when it said it has the public's interest in mind? And sorry, I'm going to give this to you. Sorry. Okay, sorry.
I'll give it a go. Look, I want to be clear, I am not the Welsh Government, and I am not in the party of the Welsh Government. So I'm not sure I can answer this question. I can tell you that there are many debates, discussions in the Welsh Parliament around healthcare. We had only one yesterday in the Senate. There are massive challenges around healthcare in Wales. Wales has, in the 4 nations of the UK, the sickest and oldest population. So there are massive challenges for Wales, and healthcare and social care. That is the big one when it comes to things like 47% of ambulance calls for ambulances are only answered within the time limit, 47%. And then things like strokes. So there are massive issues, and I'm sure every single person in this room has a story to tell about healthcare, around dentistry, around social care, around the challenges we all have. And they are particularly exacerbated in a rural area. And many of us who represent rural areas are always asking questions around rural healthcare and rural dentistry. I can spend the whole evening telling you about dentistry. So I'm very happy to answer any questions if you have them later on, including telling you about the line you must ring if you are waiting for an NHS dentist in Powys. Does anybody know? There we go. That's very poorly advertised. I can give you the number. There is a telephone number that you must ring in the day. Don't try now. Leave them alone tonight. If you don't have an NHS dentist, ring that line and they put you on a waiting list. You might think you're on a waiting list, But you need to be on that waiting list. And as soon as they have a space in your area, they will ring you back. The waiting list in Powys for dentistry is coming down. It's getting better. But please do come to me and I'll give you the telephone number to ring. But I can't answer the specific question. It's quite political and I'm not.
No. Thank you. So is there any audience member? Thanks. From John Williams, thank you very much. What does the panel think we should do about agencies, organisations that do not support the vision of Bronllys Well-being Park? I can give context.
Can I give a bit of context to that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, John Williams, working for the things, so organisation charity within Talgarth area, and also chair of the District Community Council, and that will come into context in a minute. What I get is that we're all believers here. We're all believers that we know how the agency work works. We know the advantages of organisations and communities working together. You know, it's the vision of the Wellbeing Park. Now, I'm going to pull an organisation out that I don't think believes or supports this vision, and that organisation is the Post Office. Because if you bring through both, you will notice there is no post office. And one of the things the community council be doing in the Cwmpas district area is trying to say that the post office is a social organisation that has massive well-being benefits. Right? Now we give it solutions, but it's like talking to a brick wall. So it's talking economy. You can go to Talgarth, you can go to Talgarth. How can you get there? You are not public transport. There's no public transport. You haven't got a car. Now, what I'm asking and what kind of thing we should do, and perhaps Mike would be a very good example of the way that you got a library up and running against opposition. What do you think we should do about organisations that don't see the multi-agency advantages? And in my previous role, when I was so, you know, we had a net in a matter, it takes a whole village to educate a child. So what do we do about those organisations? I would say banks. I'm not doing pure banks, but I think post office has a massive social role to play in our communities.
Okay. Thank you, Gordon. What I'm going to do is ask each panel member to give a quick answer to that. Thank you. So I'm going to start with you, James. Sorry. Come along this way. Thank you.
It's a really good question. I mean, it's a difficult one to answer because the post office obviously goes to the post office, and part of it shows that they tend to do what they want to do, and banks, I'm afraid I don't exactly. I'm afraid I take a recent copy of banking world, and they know very well the impact of closing the bank on the social and economic future of the communities where they close them. And they don't care. They're not on the side of interests, they're interested in profit. So I think what's most important is that you have to get a coalition of work. It's not to say that you all go to interest, but you have to try and get a coalition of work. One of the things I was very insistent on, and I can lead the council, is that there have been any antagonists between the council and other organisations, and there were. That ends on the day of the game. And I made that really clear because that's the road to nowhere. We all know, I mean, Michael made the point, we're not going to achieve anything in an area, particularly like this, where everybody says dependent on anybody else, unless we all work together, collaborate as close as we possibly can. And so, my drive, I know that the Powys Teaching Health Board isn't necessarily throwing us marks in this room at the moment because they haven't come to this. But actually, it is absolutely crucial for all of us, the local authority and the health board and the voluntary sector work in lockstep together to do the services. Because if we don't do it, they won't get delivered. So I'm really insistent on that integrated agenda, which frankly founded in previous 5 years because there wasn't. A lot of this is about political will. If the political will is there, then things follow. So I'm afraid I don't have an answer to the question about what we do about post office. But I do think we just convinces me even more that we have to make sure we gather coalitions and work together to do this work.
We just go along. Okay, all right. I haven't got a solution, but it's what happened in Bill. I'm from Bill, and we lost our post office, and it took the goodwill is what happened. The goodwill of our shopkeeper, who had recently opened, but had to jump through. I can't begin to tell you the levels of bureaucracy to get it up and running. We've been successful. We've got a post office, very successful, private shop and post office now that actually is open later than what our previous one was. So, but what I would say to you, John, is to look at what you've got within that community. Is somebody willing to step up and kind of take that on? We were lucky enough to have Tracy, and that worked really well. The second thing, when it comes to banks, I completely agree with James. And maybe it's looking a little bit differently, and maybe it's looking a bit more in-house at like credit unions. We've got them, we use them, they've been a lifeline for people like myself back when I first came back to Powys. There's such goodwill in the people that run them that actually I think that we overlook. Sometimes I think it's easy to go with the big boys, and I'm happy to online bank. It's probably something that nobody of you wants to do, but I find it quite easy to use the admin days. But actually, nothing beats. What I loved about my credit union is you couldn't just take your money out. You have to place a human being, and that stops and makes you think before and to me. So I think that it's looking at community banking rather than the big boys, as I say.
I don't think that I can answer the question about the post office, but James mentioned something about political clout. And here is a suggestion for Bronllys Well-being Park. You have about 400 members, well, 600 plus. Well, you could get between 3,000 and 4,000 members in 6 weeks if you put your mind to it. And if you had 3,000 or 4,000 or even 5,000 members, you could go to the Welsh government and ask them to demand of the health board that they hand over the land that you need in order to do what you want. And I think you would have a good clout if you did that. And that would not be a difficult thing for you to do. So I suggest you do that. Thank you.
Obviously, I will hand over.
I can't answer the question about either, I'm afraid. What I can tell you is that we are currently undertaking a review of our public transport services. We are looking at where we can make improvements. It's somewhat on hold at the moment because it's something gladly that my portfolio to be involved in as well. I think what we need to look at is how we utilise existing funds better, and how we can trace needs within each of our communities better. Thank you.
Very much. I can't answer the question of the post office either, but obviously I come from an organisation called Cwmpas, which was formerly known as the Wales Property Centre, so I'm an advocate for cooperation, obviously. And just to pick up, in terms of looking at community solutions to the problems that social enterprises, looking at community shares as a finance option rather than going to the banks. As an organisation, we've been running events called Active Planning List in the last couple of years, and that's all about bringing a bit of a variety of stakeholders together in a room to tackle the problems and to come up with local solutions to problems. And it starts with looking at what's strong in your community, not what's wrong, and looking at all your community assets, also looking at your networks and the sort of influence that is it already in your networks? And you said that there's over 600 members of Bronllys Well-being Park. If you looked at the influence and the sort of networks of all those members, I'm sure you'd be able to let me know that. You were just saying about having that list of clients. And just to finish up, I think I completely lost my train of thought there. It's my points, but it's completely gone out of my mind. But I think, just cooperation, local people working together to find solutions to the problem is the answer.
Very quickly, quick plug for credit unions. If you don't belong to a credit union, we just need £1 to join, and it helps your community and people in need. The first one, based in Bracken, Smart Money Cumberland Community Bank. The credit unions are really important for our communities. We heard James talk about poverty. We have masses of rural poverty, and we need to help those people. So join a credit union. Thank you.
Can I see anyone in the audience wanting to ask? Oh, okay. The lady. Yeah. Oh, that one. Thanks. Sorry. And then Martin.
I think I'm probably taking us back to the beginning of all this being set up, because I can, I live very close to Bronllys Hospital, so I'm very interested. But I mean, I agree with what Michael said. It would be great to get loads of people behind the idea. Don't we need to find out why Carl is not here? I mean, have they got some plan possibly area that we don't know about? Because if they have, no amount of our own persuasion is going to get us there. Surely we need to find out what their agenda is before we can do anything. And if not, well, we'll have to get somebody rich to give us a field or something so that we can do our own health well-being park. I don't know, that might be a very naive question. I just wonder.
We were told 3 years ago that Powys Teaching Health Board was busy looking after Newtown and Cwmpas and the Littles, and that they come back to us after 3 years and discussed the role of the plan for Bronllys. We've tried to have that conversation, and we've started that conversation with Carl Cooper at the beginning of January. He's a new chair. We're very sad and very disappointed that he's not here this evening. But he indicated that somebody as part of their executive team was looking at what was to become of Bronllys. And we said, well, we'd like to be involved. Can you engage us with that person? And nothing's happened. So
thank you for the question. I mean, we've been trying very hard, and you have been with us since the very beginning. We would dearly like to make inroads into making this happen for the future of to benefit all our futures. So we are still working on help, linking up with the health board. We have had some indication that they were, but we're very, very disappointed that they're not here this evening to actually listen to the public, because when they said, we can't come because we have nothing to tell the public, my answer was, well, actually, why not come and listen to us? That's quite nice, isn't it? That's called public engagement before you make the plans. They said they're making plans for the area, and I said, well, actually, why have we not been engaged with those plans? So if anyone in the room has been engaged with the local health board about their plans, I'd be interested to know. Sorry, I'm not going to harp on that. I just had very strong feelings about it. I've been given another question, which I'm going to make probably the last question. Sorry, actually, Martin first, please.
Can I? I'd just like to general question really. I'd be interested to hear the panel's view on how the Welsh Government could or maybe should support and encourage all the health boards to be more proactive for the health and well-being needs of our local communities.
Start with Lydia, and then come down. We'll just ask you.
Hi, if you look at your conference pack, your invitation pack, you will see a document which says audit of well-being, and in that it actually shows the possibilities that the Bronllys Well-being Park could offer, and all the ideas that are in that have come from the community. I think Jacqui and I could trace who came up with that idea. So if you look at it, that's the potential. What we haven't done, and we'd like some help with it, we're working on it, is actually look at the prosperity that would be brought to Bronllys and to this area, the whole area, by the development of the Wellbeing Park. So I just direct people to look at that.
Yeah, I think Martin's question was about, how can we persuade the organisations to engage?
I think we've started James that. We've been trying.
Well, I mean, the health board is as bound as everybody else by the demands of the Welsh Government, of the Welsh Senate's legislation on well-being. And I guess, to be fair to them, I think they are very, not overwhelmed, but under extreme pressure in terms of just dealing with people's acute health needs as much as the broader well-being agenda. But they are fully engaged with the partnerships which I mentioned in my presentation. And I think I detect in the last 12 months a much greater willingness to engage with other organisations and with local communities than maybe was the case previously. Because the pressure that all health deliveries are under, and our local health boards are different. So I do think there is a door which is open, which can be pushed open actually on this. I don't think they're slamming the door on this at all. I really don't. That's not the perception. That's not what I'm picking up in my very frequent conversations with the senior executives and with the chair. So I don't know if that's much help, but I do see a much greater willingness to engage them. That's evidence in the past.
That's great. Questions, and that's great news to hear. I'll gentleman, lean out the back. Oh, just 1 second.
So, okay.
Yeah,
great. Just on the matter of banking, with the credit union banks.
Keep the mic up.
So with the credit union banks, one of the biggest banks in Canada is a credit union called Bank City. They have assets of billions and billions of dollars. They're supported by tens of thousands of customers across the spectrum. And the thing is, they operate very much on a social conscience basis. They are a huge outfit. And the thing is, it's something that very much needed in this country because, as has been mentioned, I think, by James, the banks don't give a nuts. They just care about how much money they can pay in their bonuses. And as regards the health part of it, there is a very strong growth in what they call companies called real estate investment trusts, which are becoming very much involved in the administration of GP practices. There's an American company involved in this already. There's a company called Cllr, which is listed on the stock exchange, which is in charge of hundreds and hundreds of GP practices. And they are interested only in one thing, money. And it's being driven by profit. I mean, I don't know if Powys Health Board have been in contact or in touch with Cllr, but I believe they have. And if that's the case, I'd like to know why. So
We will put that question to them again, actually, it's quite a good question, we'll put it to them. Because they're not here, all of the questions that are directly to other people not in this room, we will put the questions to those and then actually get that back to them. So Michael wanted to have a quick answer for the last question, and then I'm going to come to yourself. I've got two other ones. You to answer first, Michael, please.
Okay. What I wanted to say was that when we were dealing with Powys County Council as was, they wanted to close all rural libraries, and we decided that we spent actually a number of years with an organisation called Powys trying to stop them from doing that very thing. And I turned up one day and said, well, listen, it would be a good idea if we actually didn't treat them like the enemy, because Powys County Council is running on 55% of the money, I think that's probably roughly right, of what they had in 2009. And they're trying to provide services to the same extent as they did. Now, I wouldn't like to run an organisation that had to deal with that. And so I think that what we did is we started to talk to them in terms of actually we understand where you're coming from. We would like to engage with you to do something which will benefit you and our community. And if you take the conciliatory approach, you might get more out of them. Now, one of the things that you could do is you could get the health board perhaps to discuss the idea of championing successes that take place with the medical services. And there are many stories about those. And if people start to see what they're actually doing well and what works, then that is a bonus for everybody. And the final thing is that if they come across situations where they don't do so well, that they commit themselves to addressing those and changing those around. And that's a completely different approach to just thinking nasty, putting anybody in a silo on the other side of the fence is not going to get you anywhere.
Thank you. I'm going to go over to Lydia in a minute. I'm going to ask this one other question, and then Lydia, you'll be the last person, if that's okay. Because then I'll call a little bit of, because I know that you're busting to get up and have a drink. So this question is interesting. The future generations have been mentioned. If you look around the hall this evening, there is not a face less than 40 years old. This is very ageist, this question. Are they not interested, or have they already moved out of the area? And that's an interesting one. Or have they already moved out of the area? Yeah, I can see some under 40s, honestly. Come back. Yes, come back. The question is, in fact, I'm going to come to you, Beck, because this is quite a good one for volunteers. How can we involve our youngsters? And we say the same for the Wellbeing Park as well. How can we involve the youngsters to make them more interested? So I'll just let you answer that, if that's okay, Claire.
Yeah, this is a quick one. You ask them.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. No, seriously, it is that, isn't it? Like I said, that was myself. We've got to have something to come. We've got to have something to keep us here. That's jobs. That's affordable housing. And when we talk about affordable housing, can we stop going for £255,000, please? Because, and I think it starts as well in terms of if I've been able to pay my rent at £700 a month for the past 5 years and I paid on time, why can't I get a mortgage? So we've got people who are stuck in private rentals and in social housing because they're not that different anymore. And it's about those things and going what's truly affordable to people. We know Powys, we know that we've got the lowest paid wages in the whole of the UK. But we love it. I've got to say that, right? I sound as if I'm being really negative. I left Powys when I was 18. And I came back when I was 30 to have my children, and I'll be damned if I'm going to be forced out again. So I'm determined, and it is that future generation thing. I want to know for my kids, for my grandkids, for my great-grandchildren, that there are going to be opportunities here. And it's too easy to me to say, oh, we've got an ageing population, we've just got to take that on the chin. Who's going to care for them? And who's going to, that's what we need to do. The Health and Wellbeing Academy, we will get that going in terms of our next generation of nurses, health professionals, volunteers. I mean, come on, we'll come through that. And that's about keeping, if there's opportunities, we'll keep them.
Yeah. Since we don't want them migrating out of Powys, so because we know they'll only come back. Anyway, I'm going to thank you for the answer. Excellent. Oh, sorry. Yes, please do.
I've sat on a number of groups over the years talking about how we retain our young people, and the majority of the time the conversation has been about jobs. It's, you know, what jobs we make available for those young people. But actually there's more to it than that. A lot of young people leave the area, not because they don't love it, but because there's nothing for them to do. They want to experience the wider world, and often they will come back. But, you know, I've come across a number of young people that do stay and just love the quiet, peaceful nature of what Powys does. But then we perhaps need to look at what's available to our young people in our communities, and I have taken some responsibility for this. We need to ensure that they have access.
Excellent. We've got youth clubs. Yes, youth clubs. So yeah, the youth clubs. Youth clubs, wonderful. So I'm going to ask you, did you want to ask a question? Absolutely. Chrissy, sorry, Chrissy. I'm going to say Lily. Sorry, Great, Chrissy. Yeah.
What are the main barriers to creating a health and wellbeing community park around Bronllys Community Hospital?
Wow. Let's go to the right one. So one to you, Lydia, to answer that, or? I'm going to answer it quickly. The main barriers is actually making sure that we can become a community land trust, and that we can work together and cooperate together with the health board and look at, I'm going to turn this way and make sure that we have definitely worked together and collaborate with the health board and look at the community assets that are there, and if we can have a community assets transfer. As a gentleman asked me to answer that there.
Yeah, my name is Richard. I actually, I run a neighbour with. Good evening, everyone. I'm Richard. I'm a neighbour. We actually live behind the hospital. I think one of the biggest issues that I see here is that the hospital itself has value as a portfolio. I've been a state manager, I run business, etc. How are we as a community going to offset? How are we going to convince the government and the National Health Service, the National Health Service, that the value of that portfolio, as it stands, there's millions of pounds. You can scrap value of the buildings. There's a lot, you know, there's a value of the portfolio that that's why they're not here. They're thinking, right, we can do this, and we will take the money for it. That's why they're not here. And anyone else who thinks that that's not the case, it's like we've got their heads in a very dark place. So I honestly believe that the issue why they're not here this evening is that they don't want to accept that Bronllys Hospital has a value as a portfolio to them, and they're not going to turn around and say, we're going to sell it, we don't care. All right? That's the main issue here, is that they have a portfolio that is worth a lot of money. Are they going to give that away to the community? It's very, very doubtful.
The added debate to this chapel their buildings at risk register, and their built heritage is part of the cultural identity of Wales, and connecting with it is good for our well-being. According to CADU, one of the Welsh Government's objectives is to protect, conserve, promote and enhance the historic environment as a resource for the well-being of present and future generations. The well-being of future generations Act places the duty on public bodies such as the Health Board to carry out sustainable development to improve the way in which we achieve cultural well-being. And what I was going to ask was, can anybody tell me how the Health Board, which is responsible for the chapel, can be persuaded to secure its future, at least by commissioning urgent works to stop further deterioration, and possibly to allow Bronllys Well-being Park to take over the restoration and use of the building. I find it iniquitous that that listed building is sat there under the jurisdiction of a public body, and it's rotting. And it's all very well, there are listed buildings all over Wales that are rotting, but a lot of them are in private ownership, and they might have the money, there's planning issues and all sorts of things. But in this case, you have the chapel belonging to the hospital with a rich history, and I just don't know what to be done about it. Thank you.
I bought the deal in there because I'm usually going to say something about the chapel, and I cannot say enough, but actually things take a long time. Cultural change and shift is unbelievably long-winded, and actually we as an organisation can actually raise funds and help those places, like the chapel on the site, to actually develop and show, like Michael says, show success. We can actually develop that chapel. We've had money in our hands to do that, but because the Health Board have been so naive to not want us to do that, it's been unable, we've been unable to be successful at doing that. So I recognise that it's really going to be, we are naive to think that we may get the whole asset, but equally we know that we can raise funds. We've got companies who can raise funds and will be able to put all of those things that are up there into motion if we get the asset transfer. So I'm just going to finish on that note, because I'm conscious that I have talked a lot about the Wellbeing Park, and actually the whole evening is meant to be about making sure that your views and the community views are held to the highest esteem from all the organisations, from the county council to the ministers to all the MS and assembly members, and now we've got members of the Senate, rather than it's very difficult to get out of the habit. However, I'm never going to say I'm very grateful for all of your time, and unfortunately it has come to an end to the question and things, because I recognise everybody could chat and have a bit of downtime. But I first and foremost love to say, and I hope we will all recognise and value the time that our panellists have given us, and give them a good hand and say thank you very much for all. I'd also like to add a big thank you to everyone who's come on Zoom, and to all those people, our audience who have attended this evening. We hope you join us and become members as well. While you're sitting there with an application there, if you're not already a member, please sign up and join us, because we might change that 600 members to the 2,000 members over the next couple of weeks, which gives us a bit more credence when we're actually fighting our corner. So, I don't think I'm going to add much more, other than that we will be having an annual general meeting that we'd love you to attend as well. And if there's any, I'm surprised that we haven't had some questions this evening. So if you have got questions that haven't been answered, or you've found, please write them down, and we'll take them all back and get them answered by the right people. So it's not over until it's over. So thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and make sure that food and drinks on us. Thank you very much for attending.